This video is sponsored by World Anvil. Ever since early last year, I've been really excited to play or run Shadowdark, the OSR game created by Kelsey Dion of the Arcane Library. And it's looking like soon I'll finally have the chance to run it for a few people. So I wanted to make a resource they could use as advice for creating their characters. And if you're at all curious about Shadowdark, I hope this video will help you figure out whether it's something you'd be a lot more interested in, or if it's not your thing. If you're not familiar, Shadowdark is a stripped-down version of 5e where the player characters are a lot less powerful and the game is a lot more deadly. One of the big creative choices here, and one that inspired the entire name of the game, is that there's no dark vision in the game. You need torches and light spells and other light sources whenever you adventure. And each light source only lasts 1 hour of real-world time. But the reason you need that light is because everything you face is adapted to the darkness. They suffer no penalties at all, which means if your light goes out, you're probably going to be surrounded by monsters that are going to tear you to pieces. And this helps create a really tense dungeon crawler. But obviously the conceit of this game demands a very different approach to characters. Your average level 1 D&D 5e character is already a good deal more powerful than a level 1 Shadowdark character, but with each passing level, the difference gets more and more stark. So to help you understand Shadowdark characters a bit more, let's go through what you need to decide as you build your character and level them up, and then I'll go ahead and cut to a live stream where I will create a couple of characters. As just an example, this is the 5th edition D&D character sheet, and this is the Shadowdark character sheet. And already we can spot some differences. Obviously, there's a lot less information and less detail, and that's for a few reasons. Not only is the game simpler, but you just can't carry as much stuff on you. If you check out the bottom right corner, that's right, you'll see that you've got 20 item slots. That's it, that's everything you can carry. Except that's not even true. Your actual limit is 10 items. The 20 is on here if you're able to find a way to make an exception. Now, this is not traditional D&D encumbrance. The game mostly doesn't concern itself with the weight of individual items, though there are some items that you can automatically carry a bunch of and only use 1 item slot, and others that would be so heavy or cumbersome that they require more than 1 slot. But this gets to the heart of where Shadowdark places its emphasis on resource management. Now, D&D is a resource management game in a lot of ways. We've talked about that before. Equipment, rations, and ammunition are a couple of these resources, along with rent, material components, and obviously the big ones are spell slots, class and subclass features, and hit points. And a lot of D&D games ignore or handwave some of the in-world resource management like rent, rations, ammo, and encumbrance, but everybody uses the big ones, the mechanical ones that determine what badass stuff you can do and how close you are to dying. Shadowdark flips the focus. Encumbrance is everything in Shadowdark. As we'll see later, the game doesn't worry about managing your resources to be a badass like spell slots. Their emphasis is on the tangible, the rewards, and the prep. The question of what you can carry with you into the dungeon is basically a way of asking, do you have everything you'll need to be prepared to enter the Shadowdark? Do you have enough torches between you to get in and get back out? Do you have enough free space to bring the awesome stuff you find in the dungeon back out? What will you sacrifice to recover those rewards? In fact, we'll talk a bit later about how much importance the game places on what treasures you recover. Looking at the bottom left of the sheet, you don't need that much space for your attacks because you don't have that many weapons. Because, again, you don't carry that much stuff on you. You also don't add your strength or dex to your damage, only to your attack, so the math is even simpler. You don't have as many features and traits, certainly not as many as we're used to getting from our race and class and subclass and background in 5e, and in a minute we'll talk about another reason why you get so many fewer traits in Shadowdark. But because of that, you can fit the traits alongside your spells in the same box, because you get fewer spells too, and they're a lot less complex. And as you can probably already tell, there are no skills in this game at all, so the only math you need to do involves your ability modifiers. Speaking of abilities, that's exactly what you do when creating your character. You start with your stats. You roll 3d6 for each stat, and you don't ignore any dice. What you roll is just what you get. And you go in order. You roll for strength first, then dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and finally charisma. The modifiers are the same as in 5e, but once you hit 18 or higher, the modifier is always a +4. There is no +5 modifier for stats. Then you can choose an ancestry, and the ancestries get really simple bonuses. For example, the half-orc in 5e has an ability score increase, dark vision, menacing to give them proficiency in intimidation, relentless endurance to bump them up to 1 hit point the first time they drop to 0 each day, savage attack to get an extra die of damage when they score a crit, and they learn the languages Common and Orc. On the other hand, the Shadowdark half-orc gets Mighty, which gives them a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with melee weapons, and they know the Common and Orcish languages, and that's it. Everybody gets a couple of appropriate languages from their race, but besides that, you only get 1 bonus trait from your race. And these traits are actually really good. Halflings can become invisible for 3 rounds, once per day. Dwarves start with a +2 bonus HP, and they roll for hit points with advantage, and that's huge. Elves get Farsight, they get a +1 to attacks with ranged weapons, or a +1 bonus on spellcasting checks. Goblins can't be surprised, and humans get to roll for an additional talent at level 1. We'll talk about talents in a second. But yeah, you don't get a whole bunch of boosts from your ancestry, which I know is something that a lot of people don't love about D&D 5e. And even if you're like me and you don't mind all those bonuses in 5e characters, their absence in Shadowdark makes it clear that this is a very different game. You also choose your class, but I'm going to come back to that in a second. First, I want to talk about your background. You can roll, or I'm sure you could probably just pick one if you like, just one off the options, but here, unlike in 5e, your background has no mechanical benefit. It's all flavor. I had someone argue in my comments recently that backgrounds aren't meant to have a mechanical benefit in 5e, they're just flavor. And like, no? You get proficiencies and languages and equipment, and you also get a trait, usually a trait that helps you out in role-playing or exploration scenes. And nowadays, you'll probably get a feat as part of your background, and it's looking like that'll be the case in the 2024 rules as well. Maybe you feel that backgrounds shouldn't have a mechanical benefit, and that is certainly a design philosophy I could completely understand and probably get behind. But in 5e right now, the community has a habit of rejecting things that don't have mechanical benefits. Do you remember the trinket table from the player's handbook? It's the one part of character creation that D&D Beyond left out of the automatic process, and I wonder if it's because people just didn't vibe with it. Aside from the fact that I did see plenty of players scratch their heads when rolling something truly bizarre that did not match the character they were coming up with or had already planned out, I also suspect the most vocal 5e players don't like features that don't offer any bonuses, so WotC is incentivized to give everything some sort of mechanical benefit. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that's just how D&D is being designed right now. But Shadowdark is not that game. Here, your character gets a background because, well, not because it gives you any bonus, just because, like, your character clearly would have had a background. Although, that's not even quite true. The description on backgrounds does read, your background knowledge and skills might prove useful during your adventures. Work with the GM to determine if your background provides you advantages in a given situation. So, yeah, you might get a mechanical buff in situations because of your background, but it's not a sure thing like it is with 5e. Okay, now let's come back to your class. And again, these are so much simpler than 5e that the entire class can fit on one page. Well, the spellcasters have a second page. The wizard even almost uses the entire second page. There are only 4 classes: the fighter, the priest, the thief, and the wizard. You get your weapons, armor, hit points, and a couple of traits, including rolling for a talent. Though the human rolls for 2 at first level. This is what we're talking about. These talents are features like learning another spell, or adding a bonus to your attacks or your damage, or gaining a stat increase, and then you get more talents as you level up. So let's talk about leveling up. Whenever you level up, you roll another hit point die and add it to your total, but you don't add your constitution modifier after level 1. If you're a spellcaster, you learn another spell, and we'll talk about spells in a minute. And then every other level, you roll 2d6 and you gain a talent. And that is what you get when you level up. You don't unlock existing features that are scheduled at certain levels, and you don't choose subclasses or feats. You roll randomly to see how your character develops. Kelsey Dion has said that the reason you don't choose what you get when you level up is so that you don't try to overplan what you want to do with your character. I'd imagine the reason she doesn't want you overplanning is because your character can die really easily in Shadowdark. And it feels a lot worse to put a lot of energy into what you want to do with your character, and then the character winds up meeting an ignominious end in some corner of a dungeon before you get to all of your grand plans. The fun of Shadowdark is discovery. And that's true in every sense of the word. When I run my Shadowdark campaign, I'm not planning to prepare some vast storyline like a 5e published module. If something vast and world-threatening winds up playing out, cool, awesome. But your characters need to be designed with the goal of getting enjoyment out of just exploring and discovering stuff, and potentially meeting a brutal end. And so this mindset is actually carried over into the way you level up. You can also gain the same benefit again if you roll the same result on a future level up. So it is possible you could wind up with a fighter who only got bonuses to attacks but never rolled the result where you can actually increase your stats. And this helps your character feel unique. Thanks to the random rolls you get when you level up and the treasure you find, it's really unlikely that you're going to have 2 fighters who are exactly the same. Also, there are only 10 levels in Shadowdark, and in order to level up, you need XP. And you only get XP by recovering treasure. This is something that was true in older editions of D&D. 1 gold piece equaled 1 XP, but in Shadowdark it's not 1 for 1 like that. Instead, treasure items have different tiers. So some treasure might be worth 1 XP, and other treasure might be worth a lot more. And you can actually spend gold during downtime to carouse and gain more XP. But yeah, only 10 levels and maybe 5 or 6 talents. This is why you get so many fewer traits and you need so much less room for them on your sheet. Because not only do you only get 1 talent per every other level up, but you also only level up to 10. You also know fewer spells, and let's talk about spells, because there are no spell slots in Shadowdark. You learn spells of specific levels. Unlike D&D 5e, you don't know a certain number of spells that you can distribute as you like among the spell levels you have access to. Unlike 3.5 and earlier editions, you don't prepare a certain number of castings of each spell. Like, you don't have to prepare 3 castings of Cure Wounds if you want to cast it 3 times. In Shadowdark, you just learn spells and you can cast them endlessly, as long as you succeed at casting them. More on that in a minute. First, let's talk about the spell levels, or as they're called in Shadowdark, spell tiers. Now, Shadowdark characters only go up to 10th level, and because you gain spell levels at the same rate as you do in 5e, the highest spell tier in the game is tier 5. But that doesn't mean that you can only cast 5th level 5e spells as a 10th level Shadowdark character. The most iconic D&D spells have landed on the list and have been divided up in the way that makes the most sense. But not necessarily in the way that makes the most sense if you were trying to convert a 5e character to a Shadowdark character. No, they make the most sense for the tone of this game. For example, Wish is a tier 5 spell in Shadowdark because it's one of the most powerful spells in both games. Fireball is still tier 3 because it's good as hell. Except in Shadowdark, it only does 4d6 damage because that is still a lot in Shadowdark. Some spells keep the same level, like Sending and Lightning Bolt are still tier 3, Web and Mirror Image are tier 2, even Hold Monster is still tier 5 because that would actually be an extremely good spell in Shadowdark. A lot of higher level spells just went down to tier 5 because they really should be the most powerful spells you can know. Some others just got moved around to make the most sense for what this game is going for. For example, Command is a first level spell in D&D 5e, but it's a tier 3 Shadowdark spell. Because making a single creature kneel or dance or stop or flee or whatever is pretty powerful in a game like Shadowdark. Additionally, you always roll to cast for every spell, and there's always a chance of failure. The DC is always 10 plus the spell's tier, so you're not making attack rolls against creatures, you're just making spellcasting checks. If you fail, you lose the ability to cast that spell for the rest of the day. If you critically fail, then not only can you not cast it for the rest of the day, but wizards roll in a mishap table, and priests can't cast the spell again until they complete a ritual to atone to their god, which includes a financial sacrifice, since that's the biggest goal in the game and thus the most significant consequence. And if you don't perform that sacrifice correctly, if you try to pull a fast one on your god, you could lose the spell forever. So, don't piss off your god. Speaking of the gods, let's talk about the deities and alignment in Shadowdark. The alignment spectrum is back to D&D's original 3, lawful, chaotic, and neutral. There's a lot of strong theming around law and chaos to incorporate a lot of our modern ideas around good and evil, respectively, which I think helps redefine chaos away from randomness and back toward selfishness, which has always been a far more useful description. There are 4 lawful or neutral gods and 3 chaotic gods. There are also 2 lost gods, which we'll talk about another day when we discuss the world building of Shadowdark, though they might make a cameo later in this video. And speaking of the world building of Shadowdark, let's talk about class titles. When you pick your alignment, you get a class title tied to that alignment. For example, a lawful level 1 fighter is a squire, a chaotic level 1 fighter is a knave, and a neutral level 1 fighter is a warrior. Every couple levels, you get a new title tied to your alignment. Now, many times on this channel, and many more times in the future, I'm sure, but I've talked a lot about how I don't like the idea that the people of the world of D&D know the difference between a barbarian and a fighter, or a cleric and a paladin. So you think I also would not like it when each level of a class gets a new distinct title, which also depends on your alignment, and people are just expected to know that level title by looking at you. But you'd be wrong. Because first of all, these level titles help do a lot of world building. That's something we're going to talk about in a future Shadowdark video, but in this case, it tells you a lot about what the people of this world think about adventurers, the level of fame or infamy they can expect, and their role when they get to higher levels. The fact that at level 9 and 10, a lawful fighter is a lord or a lady, a chaotic fighter is a warlord, and a neutral fighter is a chieftain, that tells you a lot about where these folks might fit into society at this point in their journey. Additionally, these level titles effectively give your character a reputation, and it's tied not just to your class choice, but also to your character's morality, religion, and worldview. So the way you carry yourself in the world is reflected in what people call you, and I appreciate that a lot. It also creates very distinct core fantasies. For example, a lawful priest starts as an acolyte, then becomes a crusader, a templar, a champion, and finally a paladin. Here we see a clear progression of different titles that all conjure the idea of a holy warrior of goodness. A chaotic priest starts as an initiate, then becomes a zealot, a cultist, a scourge, and finally a chaos knight. Once again, we see the clear progression. You still wind up as a powerful warrior who serves a god, but at no point during that process do these characters feel the same. And a neutral priest starts as a seeker, then becomes an invoker, a haruspex, which is what a diviner was called in ancient Rome, a mystic, and finally, an oracle. And again, none of those feel like cultists or like templars. One thing I haven't always loved in 5e is the idea that some subclasses are like obvious or visible. Like, you see someone do something and you can go, oh, that means they're an evoker, or aha, that's clearly a battle master. That's just a form of metagaming I don't really enjoy. But some subclasses do conjure specific ideas of how we might perceive a character, like the swashbuckler or the samurai. Even though obviously you can flavor these characters to be whatever you want, the imagery in those titles is still really strong. Here we see that Shadowdark has taken a cue from the types of subclass names that conjure a specific fantasy. And there's not even a mechanical difference between a paladin and a chaos knight, so they have far less of an impact on gameplay than a subclass does. But that's actually why I like it so much more than people knowing the names of classes and subclasses. Because this is not a game mechanic that is being transposed onto the fictional world. This is just straight up world building. It also offers a reward and a validation for one of the few player choices that you actually get to make when you're creating your character, and it gives players a way to keep alignment in play when it may not actually make any meaningful difference mechanically, which is a really nice way to encourage further role-playing. I also just love anything that can help convey the tone of the world to the players through shorthand. The fact that a warlock is just one of the Chaos Wizard titles, and the final Chaotic Wizard title is the Sorcerer, that's really cool because it captures the idea that these terms that we know so well from 5e might actually be different terms for different attitudes of character. Likewise, the Druid is the highest level neutral wizard, and isn't that just so evocative? It tells your players so much about how they're going to interact with society versus wilderness, and that communicates the idea that the neutral alignment has less to do with aloofness and more to do with a connection to nature. Of course, that's not the only way to efficiently convey these concepts to your party. You can also use today's sponsor, World Anvil. I just talked about the joy of discovery and how it plays a huge role in Shadowdark, and so there might be times where you will come up with an idea in the middle of a Shadowdark session, and now you've got to incorporate it into your setting. Well, with World Anvil, that is easier than ever to do. World Anvil's articles have gorgeous templates that help make it look like you know what you're doing, and like you've put a lot more preparation into your game than you already have. But behind the scenes, each article also offers prompts that you can use to answer questions you might not have even thought of. But then, of course, once you create the article for the thing that you came up with during the game, you still have to go through the tedious process of hyperlinking it to all the relevant words in every other article you've written. Except, surprise, no you don't, you fool! World Anvil has an amazing auto-linker feature that you can use to scan through all of your articles and find the connections to hyperlink, so you can pull off hours of work with just the click of a button. It's honestly amazing and not just saving you time, but helping you present a comprehensive world that feels real and believable. And World Anvil is offering a discount to the viewers of this channel. If you visit worldanvil.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout, you can save 51% off of any annual membership. Once again, that is worldanvil.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout for more than half off any annual membership. Thank you so much to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. Finally, if we're talking about character creation in Shadowdark, we have to talk about level 0 characters and gauntlets. This is a mode of play that, from my understanding, a lot of OSR games have some version of, but basically, all the characters create multiple level 0 characters, and then the GM runs them through a gauntlet to see who survives. A level 0 Shadowdark character is obviously even more frail than a level 1 character. 0 level characters don't get a class, and they only have as many hit points as their constitution modifier. They can wield any gear at this level. That's called beginner's luck, because the idea is once the gauntlet is over, you choose the character's class, and then that determines what sort of gear they're actually going to be able to hang on to. As soon as a character dies, that player brings in a new character to replace them. If you run out of characters, you can create 1d4 more, and as you can probably tell, Shadowdark characters do not take that much time to create, especially at level 0. Gauntlets aren't meant to just be a meat grinder. The idea is that you can also put some really cool rewards in there as a GM to encourage risk-taking. But also, they are more deadly, because 0 level characters don't roll death saves, they just die. By the end of it, you've got a character who has been through an intense experience, and now that becomes your Shadowdark character. I'm not sure that I'm going to use the Gauntlet when I run my first Shadowdark campaign, but I do have some friends that I would love to run a Shadowdark Gauntlet through just as a one-shot. I think that would be a lot of fun. So that's it. That's everything you need to know about creating a Shadowdark character. So let's get into it and go ahead and create some. What do you say? All right, so we're going to design a character. We could obviously go random and just make a random character. And we can make 0 level characters. We're not going to do that today because they're going to be pretty basic. Now, the first step is we're going to roll for stats. So these are our stats. They are not great. Well, we've actually got a really good... They're not that bad. And we've got a really good wisdom. We've got good constitution, which is good because we get that for hit points. But other than that, we're going to be a little tricky. So I think we're going to have to be a priest. Now, we're going to roll for background. We could just pick a background, but I'm going to roll because it doesn't actually matter because there is no major benefit. And this is really funny. The background is Ranger. That's the background we got. The woods and wilds are your true home. That kind of already tells us what our alignment is going to be, but we'll get to that in a second. Elf, +1 for ranged attacks or spellcasting checks. We'll be making spellcasting checks as a priest. Goblins, can't be surprised. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I like Goblin. I like this. It's a little Goblin Ranger. Let's take Primordial because we're kind of going with the nature theme. That feels more appropriate. Spoiler for when we get to alignment, we are going to be neutral. In fact, I'll just mark that down now. So we get a class talent at this level. +1 to melee ranged attacks. We'll do melee because that's what the priest seems to have the best benefits for. All right, we roll a d6 for hit points. +1 for our con modifier gives us 5 hit points. Roll for gold pieces. That is 45 gold. But I like that this gives us basically a, hey, do you want to buy the crawling kit? It is the best thing in the game. So yes, we're going to buy a crawling kit because that gives us a backpack, flint and steel, grappling hook, iron spikes, rations, rope, and torch. And already you're getting a sense of how this game works, I think, just from what you're seeing here. Because this stuff is really important. Oh, this little shopping cart thing literally made me think, am I buying something for real? Okay. I can't get chainmail, but you see here, chainmail would take 2 item slots. And so you see this, like, management system going on. I can really only buy leather armor because I assume these are grayed out because of how much gold I've got. That's what I'm assuming. Yeah, I can do both a weapon and a shield. I can do a longsword and a shield. I'm going to swap out light because, man, I don't have enough spell slots to save it, and I'll just use a torch instead. Would be nice to keep casting it indefinitely, though. But I need some way to deal damage. Holy weapon. The weapon becomes magical and has a +1 to attack and damage rolls. That's really good. And I can do it on mine or I can do it on someone else's. It lasts for 5 rounds. There is no... Well, there's focus and there's concentration through the form of focus, but there's no focus restriction here. Yeah, we'll do Holy Weapon. I think that's a good one. Deity. Got a Feast's Mirth and the Wilds. Okay. Geed is usually peaceful, but Primal Storms rage when her anger rises. Many elves and halflings worship her. And then who's Ord? The Wise, the Secret Keeper, God of Magic, Knowledge, Secrets, and the Equilibrium. No, we'll do Geed. And my title, because I am a first level neutral priest, is I am a Seeker. That is my class title. Now, there are random roll charts for names. I'm just going to use that. Mooblig. Mooblig is good. Mooblig the Ranger. No, Mooblig the Wild. I like that. Mooblig the Wild. Save character. Let's create another character. Okay. They're not great. So we could be we've got Dex and we've got Wisdom. I'm wondering if we should be a rogue this time or a thief. That would be fun. Let's just try it. Yeah, we have advantage on climbing, sneaking, disguises, finding and disabling traps, and delicate tasks. It would be nice to be able to hide. Sure, we'll do that. Ancestry, halfling, the ability to turn invisible for 3 rounds is going to be very useful. Roll for background. Ooh, interesting. A scholar. I know much about ancient history and lore. This is kind of like an Indiana Jones figure. Like maybe not the punching of fascists so much as just the sneaking around in ruins and looking for knowledge. That's fun. We roll for a class talent. Ooh, +2 to strength, dexterity, or charisma. Definitely going to bump that dex. That's a great one. Ooh, D4 of hit points. Ooh, boy. 4 and no con modifier. Ooh, boy. I'm going to have to be lucky here. Okay, we're going to buy our crawling kit. We're definitely going to buy a dagger and a short bow. And that's it. And then we're pretty much tapped at that point. I still like neutral for this, which makes us oh, that's perfect. The title is a robber. But if we went with a lawful, it would be a footpad. No, I like a robber. This one, I think he is going to worship Ord. Ord the Unbending, the Wise, the Secret Keeper, God of Magic, Knowledge, Secrets, and Equilibrium. That feels much more right for this character. I could just come up with a name, but you know what? Let's come up with, what does Shadowdark suggest? Drock. No. Ale? No, what are these are the default halfling names, probably. This character is going to be alive for much less time than I am taking to name the character. Bard Grimble. I actually do like Bard Grimble a lot. We're sticking with Bard Grimble. I like it. That's a character. Now let's create one. Let's use some, let's use all the bonus stuff. All the other stuff that she's released. All right, let's roll for stats. Come on. Okay, we could either be strength, intelligence, or wisdom, or all +1. So we could be a fighter or a priest or a wizard. Oh, I see here. Oh, okay, cool. Priest 36%. Oh, interesting. I didn't even notice this before. This is a really nice feature. I wonder what's determining this. It must be the other stats. Oh, I see. And none of your stats are higher than 14 or higher, so you may opt to re-roll. Sure, let's do it. Okay, witch. Let's play a witch. I don't know anything about the witch because she's not in the main book. She's in one of the zines, and I haven't read that yet. Minstrel. I've traveled far with my charm and talent. Okay, I dig that. Oh, you're right. Charisma of 18. Holy crap. That's really good. Yeah, we get a familiar. Oh, that's true. A small animal such as a rat, raven, or frog who serves you loyally, it can speak common. Your familiar can be the source of spells you cast, treated as though it was you for determining spell ranges. If your familiar dies, you restore it to life by permanently sacrificing 1d4 hit points. Wow. Okay, cool. Ooh, 3 tier 1 spells. That's awesome. Ooh, and there's a diabolical mishap table for the witch. That's appropriate. What's the kobold? What's the kobold's deal? Oh, it was designed on the Shadowdark Discord. I was wondering where the kobold was from. +1 to spellcasting checks. Ooh, that's good. Let's do that. All right, let's pick some spells. I don't know what a lot of these do. Cauldron. You conjure a bubbling cauldron next to you. It can produce one of the following effects. Any broken mundane item placed inside the cauldron is repaired. A fat croaking toad leaps out and follows your instructions for the next 3 rounds. That's going to be extremely useful for dungeon crawling. You can place up to 3 item slots. Whoa! 3 slots of items inside the cauldron. The cauldron expels these items the next time you cast the spell. Wow, what a good spell. First of all, Eye Bite is only a tier 1 spell. That's really good. It's a much higher level in 5e. One creature takes 1d4 damage and can't see you till the end of your next turn. It's really good. It's really good. Call upon the Willow Man to appear in one creature's mind, filling it with supernatural terror. Choose one creature of level 2 or less within range. That creature must immediately make a morale check. Even creatures that are not subject to morale checks normally, such as undead, must do so. That's really good. Puppet. Ooh. One humanoid creature of level 2 or less you touch becomes ensnared by your movements. On your turn, the creature mimics all your movements. If mimicking you would cause the creature to directly harm itself or an ally, it can make a charisma check. On a success, it resists mimicking you. Man, that, oof. Rogue Ash and Thorn. For the spell's duration, fairies, demons, and devils can't attack you. Yeah, let's get that one. That's really good. Puppet is very, very, very appealing, but having the ability to not be attacked by certain kinds of creatures might be extremely useful. Ooh, wow. Whoa, wow. +2 to charisma stat or +1 to witch spellcasting checks. Now, here's the thing. We get no benefit if we raise our charisma, because no matter how much higher than 18 you get, your modifier never goes higher than +4. So we're going to take it to witch spellcasting. Wow. This is a good character. 1d4 hit points. Yeah, it seems about right. We got lucky. Actually, no, we didn't. We got a +1. Well, we did all right. Let's buy a crawling kit. Weapons. Let's just use a staff. There's really no major difference between them. Man, we're at a problem. Because these characters are full to bursting with stuff, which means they're not really going to be able to take stuff out of the Shadowdark. Well, but she can take stuff with the cauldrons. That's really, really good. But I still, we got to leave some room on the character sheet for stuff. Okay, what is the alignment? We can do anything. We haven't seen any major indicator. What are they? They're a kobold. I forgot about that entirely. Kobold witch. Traveled far with your charm and talent, minstrel. What if it's lawful? Fortune teller. Okay, I dig that. Neutral is a shaman. Ooh, and chaotic is a whisperer. Okay, people in the chat are saying chaotic. We'll go chaotic. Fair enough. We're going to be a whisperer. The one thing I don't like about the witch class is that the final level for the witch is always a baba. That's their final title. It makes a lot of sense. I just wish that they were more different. It's just a shame. Although there is kind of a commentary there about how we perceive powerful female-coded characters and how we assume that they're all kind of the same regardless of their intentions. But, fair enough. Memnon, first manifestation of chaos, Madeira's twin, a red-maned Leonin being whose ultimate ambition is to rend the cosmic laws of the Covenant from his sister's skin. Yeah, maybe. Ramlat. Ramlat is the pillager, the barbaric, the horde. Many orcs worship him and live by the blood rite. A prophecy that says that only the strongest will survive a coming doom. No. And Shun the Vile. Ooh, this is looking good. Shun whispers arcane secrets to sorcerers and witches who call to her in the dark hours. She schemes to displace Ord so she can control the vast flow of magic herself. Yeah, I think we're gonna go with Shun. Glimmer? Yeah, that's good. I like it. Save character. All right, last thing we're going to do. I can be online for about another 6 minutes, so we're going to create a character basically as fast as we can. We're going to create a random level 1 character. We're going to go full random. No, let's show off the ability of this character creator. Let's actually make the best one. The Goblin Wizard. Okay. Woodborn. They found you in the hollow of an oak tree. Wow, charisma 15, intelligence 16. Wow. Dexterity 12, con 13, wisdom 12. Really only a negative strength. Wow. Much better stats than what I was rolling. That's really funny. Ooh, cool. Wizard language is known, Elvish and Giant. Wizard language is rare, Diabolic and Draconic. Ooh, and it picked spells. Sleep, Magic Missile, and Mage Armor. Great. Sounds good. Learn additional spell. Ooh, wow. Oh, no. That's additional spells from scrolls, and we haven't found any scrolls, so we don't get any of that. All right, fair enough. 3 hit points. That does seem about right. I wonder if it already did. It already bought us a staff because it bought us a crawling kit as well. And I'm going to change the name. Mazric. Cool. Works for me. Deity. Ooh, we'll worship the lost. The 2 of the 9 are lost to the ages, their names expunged from history and memory, yet their whispered legend lingers on in ancient forbidden texts and secret, deep places. Mazric worships the lost gods. Doesn't know what that means. Might not be a good idea. But still worships them. Yeah. Man, that's cool. I like that. All right, these are our characters. And honestly, if we took them into battle together, they would... I don't know how they would fare. Creating a Shadowdark character is so different from creating a 5e character. And honestly, one of the biggest differences is surrendering control. Sure, the characters themselves are wildly different in a ton of interesting ways that help to reflect the mentality of both games, but even just through the process of creating a character, it is remarkable how many decisions are made randomly. Your stats, well, okay, that makes sense. It's how the game used to work. But throughout the course of D&D, more and more players have gotten disillusioned with the idea of rolling random stats and getting really crappy characters. So aside from just providing criteria that allow you to reroll, games also offer the option to just choose your numbers or use a point buy method. Pathfinder 2nd Edition finally just made point buy the default approach, because for their players, the joy is in making choices and building a bespoke character. So we can see here that Shadowdark was created specifically to appeal to players who like that element of randomness. And as someone who has never really felt the need to use point buy in 5e, and who always gets just a bit more excited to roll for stats than use the standard array, I think that's something that excites me a lot about the Shadowdark character creation process. Sure, as you saw, I rolled up some stinkers, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't still excited to play those characters, even though they had some glaring flaws that could prove to be an issue during the game itself. You also roll for hit points, even at level 1, and even the process of rolling hit points doesn't appeal to everybody who plays 5e. Some players just prefer to use the average, and that is a totally viable way to play. It's especially useful when you're leveling up electronically through something like D&D Beyond, because you can't always remember whether or not you rolled for hit points or not, so you have to backtrack and do the math and see if it makes sense. So half the time I just tell my players, just use the average because it's easier to make sure that we did it right when we're using this electronic source. Other times, players get bummed out because they rolled a 1 for their new hit points, and it's such a bummer that I've actually got a house rule that you always reroll a 1 on your hit points in 5e, because that better suits the fantasy of the games that I run, and it reduces the frustration from players who don't enjoy that level of disappointment. But again, Shadowdark is specifically for the players who get a sort of frightened excitement out of realizing that you're only going to get 1 more hit point and no con modifier bonus after first level, so you're going to have to be even more careful in the next dungeon. There's something really thrilling about that, and again, it helps reinforce the point of the game. We also rolled for our background, and while I would probably let my players choose one if they wanted to, it just seemed like the point is to roll. And those were fun because they helped offer a totally new angle to the character that helped shape them into a more specific character concept. Like, I wouldn't have chosen Scholar for the thief we created, but that just wound up giving me an Indiana Jones-style character. Though obviously he did not have the hit points to be an action hero, but it helped create a very different character and not one that I would have expected to create. So I really liked that those were randomized. And finally, we got random gold. And man, oh man, I was not expecting to feel the psychological impact of not having a reliable amount of money to choose starting equipment, but of course it made a huge difference. Because, as I've said already, you live and die by your equipment in Shadowdark, much more so than in 5e. And not being able to get everything you want, not just because you don't have enough slots in your equipment, but also because you didn't get enough gold, really got me already thinking about the game and my character through the lens of this type of resource management and careful choices. And that means the tone setting for this game starts before you've even finished character creation, and that is really vital, especially for a game with such a specific core fantasy. So yeah, this was a ton of fun. Creating these characters was a hoot, and hopefully showing you this process can help you understand not just what Shadowdark is, but why you might want to play it. And if you want to play Shadowdark with me in a game that I'm getting ready to run, stay tuned. I'll hopefully have some news about that in the next week or two. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more of my videos, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. Support me on Patreon to help me unlock some other awesome goals for this channel, and join my Discord server to hang out with other rad people who are just talking about D&D and RPGs like Shadowdark and sharing ideas for their games and for characters. Follow me on Twitch to catch other character creation live streams like this one. I've got a few more planned for late January, maybe February. And follow my newsletter for other updates. If you want to know more about the games like Shadowdark that I really want to try to play this year, check out my video about my plans for 2024. Until next time, play fair and have fun.